Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining the April meeting for the Reliability Coordinator West Oversight Committee. My name is Christina Osborne. I work in Stakeholder Affairs. I'm going to be facilitating the web conference. We're going to go ahead. Steve Cobb is on the line. He's the Vice Chair of the committee. He's going to actually be running the meeting today. Michelle Cathcart was not able to join us. She's the Chair of the committee. So Steve's going to take over. So we did post the agenda and the other meeting materials out on the RC West Oversight Committee webpage on the ISO website. So you'll find the presentation there and other items, the agenda. And we do have a decisional item that we're going to go over today, so we have that draft document out there as well. We are recording the meeting today. We're going to make that recording available on our public website on that same page as the meeting materials are located. Look for that in about a week. So this is the agenda for the meeting today. Steve Cobb is going to be taking roll call first before we get started, and then Tim Beach from ISO RC is going to provide an update on RC operations, including the procedure changes recommended by WEC. He'll review RC to RC shadow operations and then provide an update on themes. Nancy Treweek from System Operations here at the ISO is going to provide an update on the RC certification. We have Joanna Lai, who's joined us from the Project Management Office. She's actually the project manager for RC, and she is going to provide an update on the customer onboarding. We have Khaled Abdul Rahman from ISO Technology, who's going to provide an update on some of the timelines and milestones coming up for technology. Gina Wanzer from Customer Experience here at the ISO is going to provide an update on the hosted advanced network applications. Hannah. Then Phil is going to lead the discussion. We do have a decisional item on the public meeting notice and posting guideline that we're going to ask the committee to vote on. So Phil's going to talk about that. We also have Eric Schmidt in the room, who is the Vice President of System Operations here at the ISO, John Swomer from Legal, and Jennifer Ross is from Legal as well. So, Steve, do you want to go ahead and do roll call?
You bet. Good afternoon, everybody. So we're going to go through this roll call, and I'm going to call the company, and then I'm going to call the name of the primary representative for the Oversight Committee. If the primary representative is not there, whoever is there from that company, if there is someone, please state your full name so we can get it recorded. So, Arizona Electric Power Cooperative, Shane Sanders.
Shane's on.
Afternoon, Shane. Avista, Mike Magruder. Anyone there from Avista? Avangrid Renewables, Aaron. Aaron Kester or Kit Blair? Arizona Public Service, Christy Coco or Twana Blair?
Christy Coco's here.
Afternoon, Christy. Balancing Authority of Northern California, Jim Shetler. Bonneville Power Administration, Michelle's not there. Troy Simpson.
Yeah, Troy Simpson's here.
Welcome, Troy.
Thank you.
California ISO, John Phipps or Larry Belknap? I know there's a bunch of you guys out there.
He's on his way. Come back to him.
We'll check in a second, Steve.
We've got about 15 others, Steve.
All right, Senate, Gabriel or Eduardo? Chelan County, Chad Bowman or Chris McDermott? Douglas County, Jeff, you there? Jeff Heminger?
I also want to remind, if the speakers should have dialed into a separate speaker line, so if you are dialed into the public line, if you could hang up and dial in using the speaker access code, that would be helpful, just in case we are missing for that reason.
Thanks, Christina. And when I get to the end, I'll go back and see if we've missed anybody based on that redial.
Great, thank you.
Grant County, Jesus? Or Leroy?
This is Leroy Patterson. I'm on.
Hey Leroy.
Hey there.
Hetch Hetchy. Brian Pauling, Margaret Hannaford. Idaho Power, Ben Brandt. Ben, you out there? Imperial Irrigation District, Tony or Matt?
Matt Smeltzer with IID.
Afternoon, Matt.
Afternoon.
Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, Chris Lynn, Simon Zwedu. LADWP, anybody? Los Alamos, Cassandra Begay.
Here.
Afternoon. Modesto Irrigation District, James McFall.
Yeah, I'm here, Steve.
Welcome, James. Montana Alberta Tie Line, Michael Manavarici. Okay, we don't have a primary representative for Nature Inter. Is anybody out there? Okay, Nature Inter Wind Watch, Mark Denary. Mark, are you out there, or Jeff? Northwestern Energy, Casey.
I'm on, Steve.
Afternoon, Casey. NV Energy, Shazad, or Chris Hoffman.
Hey, Steve, it's Chris Hoffman. I'm on.
Thanks, Chris. Pacificor, Eric Brookhouse, or Kathy Downey.
Eric Brookhouse is on.
Welcome, Eric. Pacific Gas and Electric, Tom French.
Tom French is on.
Welcome, Tom. Portland General, Sarah Edmonds or Corey McAllister. Sarah or Corey?
Corey McAllister's on, but Bob Frost should actually be the primary for this.
So,
and he's also on the line.
Okay. So, Christina, we'll need some, at least an email from Portland General changing the primary then?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
I have Bob Frost down, so yeah, I just need the contact information for Bob.
Okay. Bob, we good with that?
I think that maybe
okay.
Bob's not on the speaker access line, but yes, we'll send that to you.
Okay, very good. Public Service in New Mexico, Todd Fridley or Manuel Sanchez?
They did send in an absentee vote, so I'm not sure that they're participating, Steve.
Okay, right. Puget Sound, Shauna?
Shauna's here.
Welcome, Shauna.
Thank you.
The Steve Cobb guy is here for Salt River Project. Southern California Edison, Jim Cherry or Bert Hansen, or Gary Tarpley?
Steve, Gary Tarpley's on.
Afternoon, Gary.
Hi, Steve.
San Diego Gas and Electric, Katie Spears, Aliara.
This is Robbie Winnegate for Aliari.
Okay. Seattle City Light, Paul Krupa.
Hi, Steve. This is Pablo. I'm on.
Good afternoon, sir. Okay, Silicon Valley, Kevin Kolonowski. Sacramento Municipal Utility District, Mark. or Paul? Snohomish County, John Martinson, Franklin Liu. Tacoma Power, Chad Enninger or John Nuremberg.
John is here.
Hey, John. Transbay Cable, no designated representative. Is anybody on there? Tri-State G&T, Keith Carmen. Marianne Zer. Anybody from Tri-State?
Maud is on.
Hey, Maud. So, Maud, you're not a designated rep.
I'm the third designated rep.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, we'll, I'm sure that Christina has your contact information, Maud, so.
I believe so.
Yes.
Okay. Turlock Irrigation District, Casey? Casey Hashimoto. Valley Electric Association, Emily Frank.
Hi, it's Bronx, and I'm here.
Right, I'm sorry. Thought it was an A, it's an O. Thank you.
It's all
Afternoon.
good. Thank you.
And Western Area Power Administration, Sierra Nevada. Sonia Anderson, Kirk Sornborger. Okay, that concludes the list. Is there anyone that came on the speaker line that did not get to identify themselves for the roll call?
Steve, this is Brian Paul. Hetch Hetchy.
Okay. Who was there from Hetch Hetchy? I'm sorry.
It's Brian Pauling.
Okay, thank you. And somebody else was there?
Sorry, Steve. Kit Blair from Avangrid is also on.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
Milestones here.
Is that you, John?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And Glenn Berry from LA is here.
Thanks, Glenn.
Keith Carmen from NERC is on.
Steve,
Okay,
can you hear me?
on now?
Yeah, I must have dialed into the wrong one. Sorry, I apologize for that.
No problem.
I was talking, and then you were saying, you're not there, so I apologize.
All right,
Yeah,
I think that, I'm sorry?
Same thing happened for me, Mike Magruder with Avista.
Okay, Mike, thanks.
Chad Bowman from Chelan's here, too.
Welcome, Chad. Anyone else? Okay, with the roll call behind us, I guess our next guest speaker is Mr. Tim Beach. And Tim, RC Operations.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to talk about RC Operations today. We're going to talk about a few things. Shadow Operations is where we're at in the planning process, and we're getting very close to that now. I'll talk about procedures a little bit, and then we'll talk about SEAMs. So Shadow Operations. Just a quick look at the schedule again. Of course, we're getting very close to 5/1 now. It's been 12 days of beginning shadow operations, so we've been working on our shadow ops procedure plan and communications plan, that type of thing. And then we have the second phase that starts in 9/1. So, for the Shadow Operations Task Force, there's been a small team with the RC to RC group. I guess the small team is what it's titled, but there's actually quite a few people on it. We worked through a number of items on it. We have developed a USF PST coordination procedure, and we've drilled on that with PEAK. We'll be modifying that for when SPP, PEAK goes away and SPP replaces them, and we'll also drill on that as well. So just to keep that in mind, a lot of these things we're doing twice this year, we'll be doing these drills. We reviewed, we have a daily conference call guide. So at the beginning of every shift during the day, the RCs are going to have a conference call, discuss the plan for the day, what the system outlook is, anything that may have developed overnight or in between the time the OPEA was published and going into real time. So that's going to take place. That'll be very early in the morning every day, approximately shift time. The RCs that come off shift and those coming on shift will take part in a conference call. We've worked on a transition communication plan. So you'll be seeing your first transition communication message posting here 7 days out from May 1, so April 23rd, and that's just to announce that we'll be beginning shadow operations, which BAs and TOPs will be impacted by that. So there'll be several of those throughout the year as we transition through the shadow ops plans and the transitions to RC of record. We have a RC to RC messaging guideline we've developed, so that's centers on the processes and the types of messages we'll be broadcasting across the messaging systems in WEC. And also, to correspond with that, there's a BA-TOP messaging guideline, too, for use by the BA-TOP operators. And they received training on that with the GMS as well. So that's going on. We've developed an operations procedure matrix with all the RCs. So we've lined up all the procedures that the RCs had and corresponding with the corresponding RC procedure, and we transitioned that all the way through to December 3rd. We're looking for opportunities to drill on some of those things, but really the main goal of that is just to see which procedures everybody has and what's the corresponding procedure at the RC. We've done a number of RC to RC drills already. Again, I mentioned the USF PST coordination drill. We've drilled on the WEC 1 RAS with Peak. We'll be drilling with Alberta and BC Hydro on their interfaces as well. We'll be drilling on the ROLs that have been developed as well. So, and we'll be repeating those drills throughout the year. So, part of our daily or biweekly call, we talk about upcoming drills and the plans for those. And then we're also developing an external situation awareness narrative. So we're really trying to identify WEC-wide what our central narrative would be, our theme to monitoring facilities outside of our RC area. And corresponding with that, or important to that guideline or narrative, is how we'll respond to something an RC would observe in their analysis that's taking place outside the RC area, how they would communicate to the RC. So we want to make sure that if somebody observes something, they're reporting it to the RC that they see is impacting, make sure they see the same thing. Or if not, if it's a modeling issue, we can clarify or correct a modeling issue we may have, or a limit issue or something like that. So that's going on there. On the BA-TOP side, we have a shadow operations expectation guide. We developed it a few weeks ago with Peak. They came back late last week with some changes. Actually, they were good changes, and they sort of clarify the reporting and the BA-TOP expectations. We just had, this morning, we updated the RTWG on that as well, and the California entities are receiving training on that beginning this week. So that's going on. We'll repeat that training with the expanded footprint as well later on this year before we go into shadow operations for the expanded footprint. But the short theme to that expectation guide is that the BAs and TOPs will always call their RC of record. They will never call the shadow operations. So if a BA TOP initiates an issue or sees an issue, they'll call the RC of record, Peak, during shadow operations, and then Peak would conference us in for that. The second half of shadow operations, actually, the shadow RC will notify Peak, and Peak will set up the conference call. That way we ensure that the RC record is always center or involved in any discussions that take place with the team and BAs that are under their jurisdiction during that time. So that's a pretty good change. I think it's going to work pretty well. Peak is a little concerned about October this year when they'll have 3 entities in shadow operations and managing that. So they're trying to set themselves up for that. And we'll learn some things during our first shadow operations period here, too, that maybe will make things a little more efficient for us going forward. So we're happy to take part in that and help Peak with that as well. Procedures updates. So we have a number of procedures that we updated. Most of these items came out of certification in one form or another. Some items came about through training and just general RC to RC discussions where we were going through the training or saying when we thought we could clarify these things a little bit better for our own understanding. And I won't go through all these procedures, but I will mention the two primary ones that came up in the certification. The first one was around insecure operating states. So if you look at RC 310, mitigating SOL, IRLs, the second bullet point there, we have what's called an insecure operating state that would take place during the day. So if we have a undefined IRL that shows up, so to speak, is what it is, how we're going to address it. Our intent was there, but when the certification team went through it, they weren't quite so sure. So, we believe we had the intent, so we discovered we had to clarify what an insecure operating state was and how we were going to address it and what the sense of urgency would be when we do it. So it's really an IRL-like exceedance, and of course it's something that has to be mitigated very quickly, within 30 minutes in fact. The second item that came out of it was there's quite a bit of discussion around RC to RC communications, and what we didn't clearly state in the procedure was that the RCs when they're discussing actions, mitigations, status, those will always take part in three-part communication protocols. So very central theme to communicating. A lot of us feel that it's a normal part of activity, but they asked that we spell it out in the procedure as well. So we did that. And then the other items are really just pretty small things that we had to change. One of the things going into certification, certainly my goal and our team's goal was to get certified, but the second goal was what could we learn from our peers from the certification team. So by having them go through our procedures, which they did in detail, we were able to pinpoint some things that we thought would be better. So it was a very good experience for the team on that respect, and it helped us really add rigor and clarification to our procedures and make them not only very good for our use, but very easy to interpret by others as well. And we have a couple more items that are coming up. They're going to review to the RTWG. In fact, we rolled out drafts to them today. We're going to talk about them again on the 29th. But one of them is loss of control center functionality. We're talking about what type of thresholds should we have that might trigger an evacuation. Rather than just general terms, we're looking at more specific things that we're going to be concerned about and which would possibly initiate a controlled evacuation. And then the last one, there's been a change in the EOP 004 reporting status regarding IRL violations, so that's a change. We don't have to report those via EOP 004 anymore, so we're clarifying our procedure on that. So those are coming to your RTWG. They've got members. They got those today, and we'll be talking about those in the future. I don't anticipate any controversy or discussion there. Also, what we're providing them today was, which is not noted on here, is we have some thresholds around what's an insecure operating state. When does the operator finally, or RC finally say, when they're studying a cascading scenario, when do they finally say, okay, this is an insecure state? And, how many outages do cascade before they say this is insecure? So we have some guidelines around that. We shared that with our TWG today, and we'll be talking about that on the and the last item I have is SEAMS. So you've heard, I'm sure, that we're going to be talking about or addressing SEAMS issues by use of operating guides, which are specific to the impacted parties and the SEAMS issue in point. Initial focus was on the IRLs. We've done all those for July 1st and working on those for 11/1 right now. Just took part in the Washington import IRL call yesterday. They met for 2 hours to discuss that operating guide, worked on the Oregon export IRL. So that's continuing. We'll eventually drill on those as well with the expanded footprint. And then we also surveyed the BAs and TOPs to identify SEAMS SOL issues. And we got the results back. We've already met with Northwest Energy and WAPA related to their issues they have up in that area and that seam. We'll be meeting with them again. We had the meeting scheduled. It got changed, so we'll be meeting with them again soon. There's at least 3 issues in the Southwest that's been identified for potential seams mitigation so far. I don't have the full result from Southwest, but I know there's one around the New Mexico, Southwest Colorado transit stability area. There's a stability concern there. There's a conditionally credible Coronado Silver King item there as well, which deals with fire threats and thermal. And there's a Hacienda mesquite rad thermal. So they're looking at those right now in the Southwest. We also already managed an IPP intertie guide as well. That one's been completed, in fact. That was identified early on. In the Northwest, we have a lot of issues identified, and I won't address them all, but a couple of highlights are the West Cascades, North and South, Hemingway Summer Lake, we're looking at that, Reno N-1 stability analysis, and Milwaukee stability analysis, and then also the paths with BC Hydro and Alberta, which we'll be drilling on. So quite a bit of work going on. You should see work picking up in your areas regarding those seams issues and your staff be involved at the technical level about addressing those operating guides. And lastly, we've done some restoration coordination drills. We've met in California, Southwest, Northwest with the entities there. We reviewed their plans just to get a feel for what is going on in restoration activities as you coordinate with your neighbor BAs and TOPs. And we'll be planning joint drills going out forward. There's a drill schedule out there. I don't have it with me today, but I know we'll be drilling not only with the BAs and TOPs on the drills, but also a system-wide drill. And I believe there's an RC to RC drill as well in there. So quite a bit of work going on in the seams, which should be accelerating now as we start looking towards the expanded footprint.
So are there any questions for Tim? I'm sorry, Tim, I hope I didn't cut you off there.
No, that was just exactly what I was going to say, so give me a chance to take a breath.
Any questions for Tim? Okay, Tim, I've got a couple for you. The first one is, based on the close proximity between the ISO's BA operation and RC West, there's that temptation, I guess, to potentially have a face-to-face conversation between the RC and the BA. And as far as your communication protocols go, are all of the BAs, any instructions or questions, are those all channeled over a recorded phone between RC West?
That's correct. We've instructed both the RCs and the BA operators that any instructions regarding mitigation, status, any loggable item, any of that type of discussion, actionable items would be across a recorded phone line. So we have that instruction in place.
So at this juncture, like you said, you guys have performed a yeoman's task at getting all this stuff lined up. Are there any concerns that you have right now? What are your top concerns as far as starting the shadow operation and going live?
Well, I think our top concerns is you know, a smooth transition into it. One, making sure our communication plan is good. We believe it is. And then it's really managing the overall communications between the BAs, TOPs, and the RCs. I think the first period is going to go very smooth. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge, and probably more of a challenge on peak side for that October time frame. So looking out a bit, I'm concerned about October. I think it's manageable, and I hope we learn some things during the first phase to do that. I feel we have our procedures and our guides in place for operations then. So now it's just mainly, and we've done a lot of verification of our processes around data that we're receiving, the BA data, the limits data, that type of thing. So I think we're all set there. We'll be doing some point-to-point checks on that. So I'm really predicting that we'll have a pretty smooth operation for the California period in particular going forward. So not a lot of concerns. again, just the communications to make sure we establish that and that we stay involved in all peaks communications with the BAs and TOPs.
Very good, thank you. Any additional questions for Tim?
This is John Nirenberg, Tacoma Power. I'm just wondering, as we go into this first shadow ops, if we can kind of start taking metrics on the amount of communication that needs to take place, so everything that that you're following as far as the first group, so we can kind of see if we've got the scalability and the staffing right as we pull the second group in.
Okay, that's a good note. You know, we'll definitely be tracking probably phone call volume and the length of those calls and the types of those calls that occur and that type of thing.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else for Tim?
Oh, and I could add one thing, Steve. You know, just thinking about it right now is that we can add that as part of the RTWG bi-weekly call, and we'll discuss how shadow operations is going in general. So it gives everybody a feel for the progress and the type of things we're seeing, so we can really sort of start talking about it, you know, right away even.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, looks like Nancy Trawick is up, and I guess the presentation everybody's been waiting for, Nancy, as far as how the certification went. Based on taking a look at the slides, another ton of work on your guys' part, so please give us a report.
Okay, so I think just in general, I think the certification went really well. The certification team was here for 2 full days and a half of a third day. And so what we did to prepare was we went through all of the standards required for the RC. We prepared what we would call RSOS, which is our draft of how it all works and all the documentation that supported that. And that was all sent up to the WEC certification team in advance of the on-site visit. And we responded to a round of questions once we sent all that up and sent those back. And we also responded to pre-questions a couple months or so before the certification went. So I kind of said this already. We had 125 questions. It was a pre-certification questionnaire, which we responded to in February. We submitted 200 pieces of evidence. That's just not 200 specific pages. It was multiple pages of evidence that encompassed the 35 total standards. You can see how those break out, and 377 total requirements. We submitted the 45 operating procedures, guidelines, methodologies, and processes that you all have approved. And then we delivered the training and on the expanded tools to the operators, the RC operators, and we also did 2 weeks of pre-certification dry runs where we had all the RC operators in the room. We went through their tools. We answered, we talked through a lot of the procedures, made sure everybody was on the same page and felt comfortable how things should work. So the certification team, we had 16 actually on the team that came to the ISO for the on-site visit, plus the 7 observers that were here. So we had all of them in here. We also had a team of 11 that were SIP reviewers, and they actually were off-site, but our SIP team and security team worked without those 11 to answer any of their questions and provide all of their evidence. That was more of an off-site review versus the on-site review. So we got some really good feedback from everybody on the team. I think the ones I'm most proud of, and Tim should be as well, and I know he is that we got some really great feedback, because what our strategy was have our RC operators lead the discussion. And our operators and OEs answered all the questions. They led all the discussions. They provided all the evidence. They did all of that, and that was really well received by the certification team. They also really liked the fact that our operators were part of building the processes and procedures. They gave us, other really good comments of things that they liked that we had presented. So we felt really good about that, obviously, on Thursday when they gave us their update. So what came out of it? We didn't have any bucket 1 items. That was great. We had 3 bucket 2 items. All those items were resubmitted with all the additional information that they wanted or changes to language they wanted within a week of the certification team leaving. So those have all been submitted to WEC, and they're now going through and writing a report. We also had some bucket 3 items. Those items do not really need, they're more for recommendation. They don't need to be ready for a certification. However, we felt like there are quite a few of them, and Tim already showed you some in some of the documentation clarity we already have addressed in our documentation. We thought that they were well worth clarifying in the documentation, as well as what WEC was providing, or the certification team. We were also taking our own notes. If we were being asked questions and had to, was challenging to respond or it wasn't really clear, we felt, okay, let's make some clarifications to some of the documentation so everybody's on the same page and everybody's really clear. So we took our own notes to make sure all our documentation, especially the procedures, were very clear. So we've done all of that. There's a couple longer-term items that they're looking at that we actually have plans to do in the future, so we'll be following up on those. And there was one SIP-related item, and I'll be honest, I read it and I had no clue what it said, but I'm assuming that our SIP team was on it. So I wasn't sure what it all meant, but yeah. So I think in general it went really, really well. It was a lot, thousands and thousands of hours of work by a huge group of people here. As well as your staff, honestly, and all of you, because without all of you and yourself helping us get through all that documentation and all those procedures, we wouldn't have been here. So we think it went really, really well. We're expecting to hear back from WEC in the next couple of weeks. The process then is we have 14 days to respond to their report, and then after that, we'll see when they would want to actually issue the certification. They do plan on coming on site one more time, at least a few people, I don't think the full team, but a few people during the shadow ops, probably in June, just to see how that's going. So I'm not sure, when the certification will actually come through prior to or after that June visit. We'll have to find that out, but that's the plan right now. And I think that's the last slide. That's the last slide. So if anybody has any questions, I can answer those.
So, Nancy, 125 questions, that's a pretty high bar. Since certification of RCs is not a very common thing, did you get a feel for how those questions were drafted? I'm assuming that WEC and NERC had a lot to do with it, but were some of the other members on the team, the BAs, TOPs, involved in creating those questions?
Yeah, I believe that everybody was involved in creating the questions, and they were kind of gathered. Some of them are redundant to others, but we answered them all anyway, just to make sure we were clear. And yeah. So a lot of them were kind of pre to what we expected for certification questions. So, we answered them in February, and then again, I think that really helped a little bit, but all those answers were within the documentation as well, as we were submitting documentation.
Any additional questions for Nancy? So far you made it, Nancy. Breath of, a deep sigh of relief, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, Joanne Alai, onboarding.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I want to do a quick dashboard view first, and then focus really on what we're doing now. Tyso and all the folks from your team helping moving forward for shadow operations. As you can see, agreements, not a problem. Everything's been complete there for a while. The network model, we have in caution for the November customers, complete for July customers for a while already. And that's really because there are a few customers where their network model will be going in by July 1st. It's actually about a few days before July 1st instead of by June 1st. The impact of that is really negligible from a RC perspective. Because the integration testing doesn't require to have the most up-to-date network model. We have a network model that's perfectly fine for integration testing. It is required for the data validation that is starting in July. So we just put that in caution just to keep an eye on that. We want to make sure the model gets in on time, so we're really keeping an eye there. Other than that, operating procedures and operating guides are complete there on target for the November. So where we're really focusing our attention is on the messaging and the customer integration pieces. So all the data validation or the access has all been verified for July customers, data submissions, everyone's been able to submit data, and that was actually right around certification time as well, the certification visit. We're now focusing on data validation. We're meeting with each customer to verify that the data is submitted and that it's what you send is what we receive, and do some quick validation there. We've got, that's about 50%, maybe a little less than that at this point through the data validation, but 80% overall for July customers, and probably even a little bit more than that, kind of a guesstimate there. And again, shadow operations starting 5/1, so that's our goal. So next slide. So shadow operations starts at 5/1 at 5 a.m. In production, it will be at midnight on 7/1, but we didn't see a need to do that for the start of shadow operations, so that's actually going to start on a shift change. So where we're focusing now through the end of, until we get to the next few weeks actually, is completing the data validation and the day-in-the-life testing. Now, day-in-the-life testing is intended to be a dry run of shadow operations, so focusing on what the process is, make sure your subject matter experts are participating, submitting the data that needs to be submitted, whether it's daily or hourly or intra-hour. So we've got a worksheet for that for the team to follow. Also, provisioning your access. That's another key important item right now. We're definitely seeing some questions come through, and Gino Wenster's been helping a lot with that as well, to make sure that everyone has access to the stage environment. There are 2 applications that will actually be in the production environment. They're the RC portal, which is already there on the 15th, and the GMS system as well. They're on the 15th. So when they're doing their access submissions, make sure they're doing those 2 applications in the production environment. The rest will be in stage. I've had some questions by folks saying, do I need to do the access as I did in map stage all over again in stage, and the answer is yes. So if people are asking you that, remind them that yes, it has to be done, and we can't start shadow operations unless that is done. What I will be doing is sending out a little worksheet to everybody and asking for their feedback. Have you completed your access? Have you completed your connectivity test to verify that, yes, we're hitting the stage environment? So I'll be doing that over the next week. And that's where you're saying, where I put here, ensure your technical teams are redirecting to the shadow operations environment, stage environment. So you'll need to do that to make sure that when we submit out that little worksheet that comes back and says, yes, we are connecting, yes, we have access, so we're ready to go. Let's see what else is on here that's important. I think, just saying that customers are expected to submit as we do in production. I know Tim covered a lot of what's expected there, so I don't have to cover that again. We will be monitoring, and of course we will have support, technical support throughout the shadow operations period. on my slide. And this is just a quick batch as of yesterday, where we are with the data validation progress. So most of these that are showing in progress are minor variations that were identified during the data validation. I think in one case there's a minor fix that was to be done on the customer side. Some places it's just a double check afterwards or additional data. So not a lot of major items there, and we're going to continue through those meetings through tomorrow, and we'll have some follow-up meetings through the 25th if needed. And that's about it. Any questions on onboarding?
This is Keith with TriState. Just a curiosity question. I noticed you're starting your shadow operations 5/1 of 2019 Pacific. And so I guess the question is what time zone is that? It wasn't articulated on the slide. And the second part to that question is there a standard time zone that will be used by the RC West folks?
So, the shadow ops period is in the Pacific time zone. That's when we'll be starting our transition, the shadow ops. So 5:45, 5:45 shift change. As regards to the RC West standard time, any operating instructions of that type will be issued in the time zone of the party receiving the operating instruction.
Okay, so the RCs will then track who they're communicating to and communicate in their time zone, so there's no confusion?
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
And that's as Peak does it today, I believe. So that's correct.
So the transition plan, though, and the transition items, I'll be keeping those times for convenience.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks. I appreciate that.
But I will up the transition plan to specify that because I just realized I did not.
Just a curiosity, for those customers that are July 1st customers, are there any comments about their current experience as far as ramping up to be ready in interactions with RC West?
Steve, this is Tom French from PG&E. There's no concerns here.
Thank you, Tom.
Steve,
anyone else within that footprint?
Steve, it's Jim Shetler.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, and no concerns from our end.
Very good. Anyone else?
This is Emily from EA. No concerns.
Yeah, Steve, this is Gary. Steve, this is Gary Charpers from Medicine. I would agree with Tom French and Jim also.
Okay, very good.
Steve, this is Brian calling with HSU. We actually have our meeting this Thursday, so if any concerns come up, I'll let you know, but at this point in time, no.
Okay, very good. Anyone else?
This is Matt with IAD. We actually have our call here at 2 o'clock. No concerns as of right now, but hopefully everything goes smooth.
Thanks, Matt. So, Joanne, this is a kind of a parochial question, and I guess it impacts SRP and Seattle, and I think that you've already heard this, but really, for some of us, there's really 3 buckets of customers that are going to be getting onboarded. The folks that we just talked about on July 1st, and then those entities that aren't EIM entities, and then those of us that are kind of in the middle where we're not going to have EIM in place when we go live with RC West services. There's that gap in there. In other words, that information exchange that is kind of already there from an EIM perspective, but it's not going to be there for us until, 5 months later. And I know that SRP's talked to you about this, but any insights on that one?
I think we have been working, I know I've been working closely with SRP on that. We've been, actually today we went through a great slide that their team put together to show what's going to be ready and when, make sure they're aware and they're planning for that. Seattle has also requested a combined meeting, so I think it would be a good idea to do that, to have a conversation with their EIM project manager. Of course, I'm the EIM project manager for SRP plus RC, so I think between 2 of us covering CAISO and having a discussion there and bringing in some of our technical folks to make sure that everyone is comfortable
with what needs to be in place when and the exact timing. So I think that conversation would be helpful.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay,
Any other?
so, yeah, this is Pavel, Group Sales. Like, yes, we will try to schedule that. We had some internal conversation about that as well, and we'll be happy to sit down and talk to you guys about that.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Any other questions for Joanne?
This is Brian calling. Just a comment, and we've been working with Joanne regarding a data specifications request that we received from Peak. So beyond shadow operations, there are certain data that TOPs in the West will need to continue to deliver to Peak directly. Section 1, which is, I believe, real-time, and Section 6 modeling data will still need to be provided to Peak until wind down in November. So just FYI regarding that.
Thank you very much for that one. Any additional questions on this segment? Okay, technology. Khalid?
All right. Thank you. So from a technology, the first slide is to show the schedule for the whole project, and it has also the two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. You've probably seen that before. And we try to indicate where we are, currently, and that's indicated by the start, where, like Joanne said, that we are at the beginning of the day in the live testing. So for July 1st customers, I think we are in a very good shape, at least from a system point of view, from a network point of view, from all of the milestones. We hit all of the milestones that we were scheduled, and we feel very good about, the timeline as well as the schedule at this point. We don't have any reported issues related to the July 1st customers. The second line of the last part of the slide from the bottom is basically for the phase 2 customers. So we also try to show you here the schedule for the phase 2 customers. And I'll be speaking a little bit more detail about why we are putting that as a caution in the previous presentation by Joanne. So if we go to the next slide, okay. So the next slide, we are on track, as I said, for the July 1st, and and you heard quite a bit about the certification on the March 26th, actually. And the functional performance and testing is undergoing, and we have a lot of activities actually happening between the different teams here, and we are actually, as I said, reporting on track for the July 1st. For the second phase, which is the November 1st, the system development and testing. There are certain features that we would like to have for the November 1st, that is not needed for the July 1st. So those features are actually in-house, and we are testing a lot of them. So our development team is working closely with our vendors and with the business unit to try to continue to be on track for the remaining of the RC functionality. There is many activities undergoing for the RC to RC integration activities, and talking about the different SCADA points, integration, the high voltage SCADA collection, the data points, and as well as the full network model activities. And this is where we flagged it as a caution for the full network model. I think the next slide will tell us more about that. So currently, we are tracking for May the 23rd, which is our timeline or our deadline for putting the Q2 2019 network model. This network model needs to go to production on May 23rd. a week after that, we usually will put it on what we call our map stage environment, which is a non-production environment that is open and will be visible for the RC customer, all of the RC customers. And that network model, initially we were targeting PPA, SRP, and Seattle City and Light to be part of that model with their updated or with the network model that they gave to us, submitted to us in November. And unfortunately, we were not able to make it for these three balancing for three RC customers until a few weeks after the May 23rd. So we will have it on the map stage environment on June 27th. And the reason for that is those areas when we were doing the testing, there is quite a bit of changes compared to the to the size and also the state estimator results that we were comparing against. So we were not able to integrate with the Q219 on time to meet the deployment on the non-production environment by end of May. So we divided the work into two phases. We said, okay, everything else goes into the May time frame, and the PPA, SRP, and Seattle will go June 27th. Now, I just wanted to make sure that it is clear that the model that we will put on May 30th, which we call it Q219, it has PPA and it has SRP and it has Seattle, but it has the model that we currently have from PEAK. So it is whatever the ISO currently has for those areas, we will have it there in this model that we will deploy in the May 30th. The difference between the May 30th and the June 27th is that instead of having the models from what we have from the PEAK, we will, in the June, we will put the model that we had from those areas directly. And there are certain, areas, like, our process was we exported whatever we have to the different, and we send it to the different RT customers. Some of them said, yeah, what you have is good. Some of them said, no, I would like you to get my update, and they exported the file, information to us. And this is what we are targeting for the June 27th, is what was sent to us is actually in this model that we will deploy in June 27th. Now, the question becomes, does this impact the start of the integration testing, which is supposed to start June 1st? And we don't see any impact to the start date for that one, because as I said, the network model for those areas will be there on the system. They can actually even submit if they want, because most of the resources, we have it in our network model. Currently, they have it in the PEAK model. There may be some few changes that we don't, some updates that we don't have in our network model. But I think for the purpose of the integration testing, it shouldn't actually matter. However, it's only a few weeks until we update the network model with that information, and those three areas will be catching up before we do the data validation that will start July 1st. So we think we can do that. We are actually on a good schedule right now to meet. The EMS team feels very good about meeting these deadlines, but we wanted to be transparent and indicate this, so we mark it as caution because of the July 1st actually deadline, not of July 1st, not data validation start in July 1st. So, and we are deploying the network model on June 27 for those three areas. I just added, the Q3 network model, which is the August network model. This one will have a more even updated, any incremental update that we received after the November deadline that we had for our RC customers. So if any other customers give us more updates to their network model, that will be actually on the August network model. Other than that, I think from a system point of view, all the systems should be ready, and we should meet those, both the June 1st and the July 1st for the data validation, as I said, which is the most important phase, in order to make sure that everybody is happy with what we have for them. Any questions so far?
So I guess the question I would have from an SRP perspective, have you done a comparison, just by exception, between the model that you have of our system from Peak versus the one that we sent over? I'm assuming what we sent over, based on the fact that it's going to have some EIM influence, there's going to be a lot more underlying voltage depicted in that model than there would be with the Peak model.
Yeah, so for the SRP, we actually send our exports to, to the different RC customers as indicated, and if there is any difference, those differences are actually right now, if we can actually modify it before we issue the June 27 network model, we would have actually did it manual if it is like small things, but I haven't received any major information about big differences between those models. Like you said, there is some changes, or there is some more talk about the EIM, from an EIM point of view, like in terms of the ETSRs, definition of the ETSRs and the schedules and all of that. That still needs to happen. And we actually, I think we probably in the process, or maybe we sent the draft maybe today or yesterday to SRP about the process of defining of the energy transfers. I think Joanne, maybe she sent it to SRP already, right? So those type of discussions are actually more of EIM related that may impact some of the market information or the master file information that will be needed for aggregation and resource definition for EIM market, but they don't have an impact on the RC in particular.
Okay, very good. Troy Simpson, any concerns from a BPA perspective?
No, we're working with KITSO closely on submitting our network model to them and receiving the network model from them and integrating in our system. So I think we're working closely, so nothing to raise at this time.
Thank you. Powell, any concerns from a Seattle City Light perspective?
No, not at the moment.
All right, thank you.
Excellent. So I think that is my last slide.
Any additional questions over technology and modeling? Okay, Gina, you're up.
Awesome.
Hannah.
Just want to hear about Hannah. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to review the timeline and reiterate what is coming available when, and then I'll cover some training. We heard your feedback last time, so we've incorporated some new things. So as we mentioned before, the Hannah base, which is the read-only RTCA results, that Hannah base is available now for RC customers if you've been provisioned access. What I didn't put on here is in August the on-site training that will be happening, but that on-site training in August will happen, and then in September, on September 1st, we'll open up Hannah visualization and study for testing and customer validation. This will also open up some opportunity to begin training at your own site. In October, we'll then begin streaming the production data in shadow operations in the pre-production Hannah. Then in November, we'll cut over to the production version, which is paralleling with the RC West Phase 2 go live. And then again on December 3rd, the peak hosted advanced applications will then be terminated. So this will give you a few months to work with both systems, and I encourage that if you guys have certain groups in your companies, to start jumping into the HANA base so they can get used to that UI, which is very similar to the HANA study and visualization. So the HANA training resources, so we are going to be doing a HANA webinar, which is going to cover HANA base training we're targeting May 24th. And this will focus on getting familiar with the UI and how to read the results in the RTCA side. And then we're kicking off the HANA CBT training and video development this month as well. And we're starting our development on the on-site training, which is going to be the train the trainer format in August. And then stuff that we actually are currently developing, so I already mentioned the CBTs. I just want to point out here that the videos are going to include stuff that applies to HANA study and visualization. These videos will give your groups some insight into things like running a Power Flow or contingency analysis and starting to get familiar with those parts of the tool. And then the HANA-based user guide, we're in development of that, so once that's available, we'll publish that on the RC portal and the HANA working group, and eventually we'll use that as a core to develop as a user guide for this session.
That's it, right?
Yep. Are there any questions?
So, Gina, the last meeting we discussed the fact that there may be some entities out there. For the entities that are currently purchasing those services from Peak, this is obviously very important for them that these services continue. But we brought up the issue with some folks that may want to pick up these services or complement their existing network applications in-house. And, you know, I had mentioned, asked if there was an opportunity for some of these entities that aren't currently planning on using the HANA to attend maybe some of these training sessions such that they could get a handle on what these services are really like. So would you consider, I mean, from that perspective, would you limit that look to just the webinar, or what do you folks think about it?
So we haven't yet worked out the details on the attendance for the August on-site training, but I would encourage you to have your users attend the webinar to get the look at the UI, and then those videos and the CBT that are coming out will be, I think, pretty good looks at what the tool is capable of, and if you think it's something that you'll need to complement your current tool. We can discuss the option of adding them in the on-site training if they want that visibility before committing to it, but that's not something we've yet gotten to as far as the logistics go.
Okay, so as far as this product goes, are you guys looking at this the more the merrier, or are you really looking to kind of limit it to those folks that really need the services first and then bring people, onboard people later that might want them?
Sorry, to clarify, do you mean for the training or for the actual tool itself?
The actual services themselves.
I think that one's on a need basis. If you think you're needing it and you want to purchase that service, that's really up to you guys. I don't think, from our perspective, we're just offering the service. And in particular, it was, I think, originally because of the folks using HAA. But if you think you need the service to complement your current tools, that's up to you.
Okay. I guess my question was really directed at your resources. So obviously you've allocated the resources to be ready for those folks that need the services, but are you limited in that area, or would you just say, yeah, whoever wants them come on board, we can handle it?
I think our current stance is whoever needs it or wants to come on board will help support that. Reliability, I think, is the main focus here.
I hope so. Okay, any other questions for Gina?
Hey, Steve, this is Jim Shetler.
Yes, sir.
Gina, one of the things we talked about at the last meeting is whether there's been any baselining between the HANA offering versus the Peak HAA, and whether the customers understand what they're getting or not getting? Have we had a chance to do any of that?
So we opted to not provide a specific gap analysis, but the main fundamentals and functions of what the tools can do are very similar. There's not, when we talk about gaps, we're talking about minor features or UI differences. And so that's part of the reason why we actually decided to develop the user guide and really up our HANA-based training so that folks who already understand that the fundamentals are the same can begin to look at the UI and understand what those differences are and just really how to use the tool. Because again, the fundamentals and the concepts behind them are the same. Now it's just how are we performing those steps in this new tool.
Thanks.
Hi, this is Troy Simpson at Bonneville. We recently came to our attention that a number of the HANA visualization displays that we currently get from Peak are not part of the HANA base. So I guess we'd be interested in talking about where some of the visualization lives and if some of them might be included in HANA base.
So the displays are not part of the HANA base, as you mentioned. The HANA visualization is an add-on service. So if you want, Joanne and I can follow up offline, give you more information on what that entails.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Gina? Bill, looks like you have the ball.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm just bringing back, Steve, to your request. We've been talking about public notice process and guidelines, and so really that's what this is to bring it back to the Oversight Committee. 2 weeks ago, we went ahead and sent out those guidelines to everybody, and Steve, at this point, we have not received any comments. What we did in that document was really just to write out sort of in a more word version what we've seen here over the last couple meetings in regards to this table. And so I just threw the table back up here on this document, this PowerPoint rather. But in the document we sort of spelled it out, and and just to walk through it again for everybody's benefit, what we're really saying is 3 weeks prior to any meeting or more, we would issue a market notice identifying what the meeting is and so forth. And then 2 weeks prior, looking to the public to see if there are any items that they wanted us to consider in adding to the agenda. But then ultimately then 1 week prior to the meeting, there's really two things that happen. One is to publicly notice the agenda, so everybody what is going to be on that meeting, and then also post the documents that are decisional items and make sure that material gets out there ahead of time. The rest of the materials, things like these presentations, would come out 2 days prior to the meeting. And then, of course, there's a couple of things that we do after the meeting, and that is to post the decisions. So we've got a record in terms of what were the decisions, and also make the meeting recording available so everybody can listen to the discussion that we have. So just with that quick summary, I guess, Steve, it's really back to you in terms of asking for, approval of this notice and posting guidelines.
Okay, thanks, Phil. My view on the two-page document was that you guys thoroughly addressed pretty much everything that was discussed at the last meeting. And then, we had a further exchange on the ability, and if we needed to bring something up on very short notice, that's the last thing that was covered within the document. So the public notice stuff is all there on the timelines that Phil just went over, and we've got an out. If we got to react to something quickly, we can bring that issue to the table for the Oversight Committee's consideration. So as Christina mentioned, the document was posted. One example of the process is that in the case of Public Service in New Mexico, they were concerned they might not be able to make this meeting. They reviewed the document. They voted to approve. And, of course, that's permitted under this. One of the drawbacks, of course, is when we get ready to ask for a motion to approve this, any further discussion that we might have, Public Service in New Mexico is not going to be able to hear, but those are the rules. So the other set of rules in our voting procedure just say in past leadership roles, we've been able to use approval by consensus, but our own voting procedure for this particular matter requires a roll call vote. So I'm going to have to go through this roll call when we decide to take up the question of approval for this document. So is there a motion on the floor to approve the document?
Jim moves.
Okay, Jim Shetler moves to approve it. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the second.
Christy Coco, second.
Okay. We got a tie between Gary Tarpley and Christy Coco, but we got a strong second there.
Yeah, I think Christy won that one.
Okay. Okay. Is there any discussion on the document? Okay, I'm now going to go through this roll call as quickly as I can. So, Shane Sanders for APCO. Shane, are you out there? All right, Mike Magruder.
Approved.
Kit Blair for Avangrid.
Approved.
Christy Coco for APS.
Approved.
Jim Shetler for Bank.
Approved.
Troy Simpson for VPA.
Approved.
John Phipps for California ISO.
Approved.
I didn't get anybody from Sanase. Is anybody out there? Okay, Chad for Chelan.
Approved.
Anyone from Douglas out there? Grant County, Leroy?
Approve.
Hetch Hetchy, Brian?
Approved.
Anyone out there from Idaho? IID, Matt?
Approved.
LADWP, Glenn?
Approved.
Los Alamos, Cassandra?
Approved.
MID, James?
Approved.
Anyone from Nature Inner? Casey from Northwestern?
Approved.
Chris from NV Energy?
Approved.
Eric from Pacific Core?
Approved.
Tom from PG&E?
Approved.
Portland General, Bob Frost?
Yep, approved.
Okay, we have an approval from P&M, as I previously stated. Shauna from Puget?
Approved.
SRP approves. Southern California Edison, Gary?
Approved.
San Diego Gas and Electric, Ali?
Approved.
Seattle City Light, Powell?
Approved.
Anyone from Silicon Valley? Anyone from SMUD?
Yes, Mark, approved.
Thanks, Mark. Snohomish. Anyone from Snohomish? Tacoma Power, John?
Approved.
Tri-State, Keith?
Approve.
Turlock Irrigation District, Casey, did you make it? Valley Electric Association, Emily?
Approved.
Anybody from Western Sierra Nevada? Okay, motion carries. Thank you all for that. Kind of gives us incentive to reinstitute a consensus approval, but we got the voting rules. So next topic is future agenda items. So typically the way this has worked is RC West staff has gotten a hold of Michelle and I to discuss the agenda topics that they believe are important to discuss at these meetings, but we definitely want to open it up to the membership. So for our next meeting, are there any agenda items that the members or the customers would like to have included?
Hey, Steve, this is Jim Shetler.
Yes, Jim.
Maybe two items to talk about. One is whether the ISO give us an update on the estimate for our billings for next year, now that we know who the signed parties are taking services. Might be nice to at least understand that. And then there's been a discussion going on at WEC about forming an RC operating committee, and I think it might be worthwhile for us to at least discuss the pros and cons of that.
So a rejuvenation of the Reliability Coordination Subcommittee, for those of you that remember that, or some semblance thereof. Okay, we'll include those two items, Jim. Any other items?
Steve, this is Phil. Jim, can I just ask you a clarifying question? You're trying to get a sense of now with the volumes that we have, what is the rate that we would be at? Is that what you're trying to drive at?
Just trying to get a sense now that we know who the customer base is, can you give us an idea what you think our billings will be next year? Many of us are getting ready to start our budget processes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
And Phil, I guess that might not necessarily be an agenda item. That may just be notification from RC West. It's going to take Jim a while to get over the California ISO thing, but RC West could notify the customers whatever way you want to approach it, I guess.
Yeah, that's why I was asking for a little clarification, because we could certainly talk about rate and we could talk about some of those things. I need to go back and look at whether we've received all the data from everybody to be able to get there, because certainly we had NEL data readily available, but one of the things I'm not remembering is where were we on getting the information from the gen-only VAs. So I'll have to look into that, but I can certainly get back to you and see if we can report at the next meeting. If not, we can certainly tell you when the schedule would work we can, so you can give as much heads up as possible, Jim.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Any other additional agenda items? Okay, I'd like to open the floor to public comment. So, Christina, that's opening all those phone lines.
Great. Okay, thank you. So what we'll do, Steve, is I think we'll just have people raise their hands. So if you do have a question or comment, you can raise your hand by pressing #2. And Noreen, if you can let me know if anybody enters the queue, that would be helpful.
Okay, we do have a question. Caller, please go ahead.
Hi, Steve. This is Eric Barron with YRAB.
Hi, Eric.
Hi. I'm here just sitting in for Jordan White, who's the regulatory liaison. And for your next meeting, he'd like to be added to the agenda for maybe 10 minutes to just address the group.
Okay, we'll make sure he's on the agenda.
Great. And we'll probably follow up before that to, narrow it down a little bit, but just wanted to make that.
Okay, with specific topic?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Christina, any other hands raised?
Noreen, do we have anybody else in the queue?
I don't have any other questions right now.
Okay, so the members received information about an executive closed session that follows this, and I'm actually going to start that session at 35 minutes after the hour for those that may need to just take a quick break. So we're going to go ahead and end this call, and we'll open the other call based on the information that you received for that executive session at 35 minutes past 2 o'clock Pacific time.